This is Coach Aaron Saft on the Running is Life podcast, episode 200. Quite a mile mark. Just what a experience it's been, man. As I look back through all the episodes and the evolution of this podcast, I thought it was a good time to just reflect. Here we are. I'm recording on December 13th of 2023, and man, with the new year coming, the state of our sport, I think it's a kind of a time to reflect and think about some of the things that have evolved in our sport. To give you a little background, my running started back in 1990. I was a middle schooler. I ran cross country and track. In middle school, that was 8th grade for me. And then went into high school and really enjoyed, my experience in high school. My cross country coach was amazing. I had some great track coaches, and that's where my experience with learning about training principles began. My cross country coach was not involved in track, and I had to teach myself a lot. I asked him a lot of questions, of course, but I also had to read a lot, and there wasn't much books out there at that time about training and training principles. So a lot of it I pulled from, media magazines, and learned from magazines like Runner's World and Running Times, and talking to other runners and finding out what kind of things they were doing, and just trying it myself, being an experiment of one, and unfortunately my teammates too. Well, fortunately and unfortunately, because they went through some hellacious workouts. But that's where I began learning about training, because I had to train myself primarily in indoor and outdoor track. As I said, I had great coaches, but they just didn't know what to do with me. I had a great high school career, went on to run for NC State, really enjoyed my collegiate experience. I had some amazing races and places and experiences throughout college. And post-collegiately, I started running on the roads, and around the year, I guess it would have been around when we moved to Blacksburg, Virginia, for my wife to go to med school, which would have been 2003, is where I really started trail racing. I always loved trails. I grew up in the Shawangunk Mountains, in kind of southeastern New York, if you will, about an hour and a half northwest of Manhattan. And the Gunks, as we affectionately call them, was a great ridge line with just trails all over the place. And I lived in Middletown, New York. My dad lived in Walker Valley, and so I would go up there and do runs up by him, and we would always search for trails where we lived in Middletown, be it an old rail bed or whatever we could find. We just loved to get out in the woods and run, my friends and I, my teammates and I. So my affinity for trail running started there. And, when I first started into kind of trail racing, the sport was, it wasn't in its infancy. I can't say that, but it was young. It was not what it is today. The sport has evolved so much. At the time, I remember winning a gift card to a new company called Innovate. And that began a long and storied history with that brand. I ran for them professionally, and really got to evolve with trail footwear. Innovate was the first one that really kind of separated themselves, I would say, from what was, an industry that took a trail hiking shoe or boot and tried to make it into a trail running shoe. When we look at the old models like Montrail and such, they're pretty clunky. Not the swiftest things to run in. And Innovate kind of changed that. They came out with more minimal, very lightweight and fast, grippy shoes. It was, kind of, a shock to the industry, this brand. And obviously, to this day, and we're going to talk more about shoes as we talk about the evolution of our sport and kind of the state of the sport as well. But, like just having, footwear that I enjoyed running and racing in was just an amazing experience, because road shoes at the time, granted, again, they've evolved, but they were so much more advanced. They were so far ahead of trail shoes. So just seeing that evolution of the trail shoe has been pretty amazing. I've really enjoyed seeing where trail shoes have come and how many brands now have trail models, and the various stack heights and cushioning levels, traction patterns. It's just incredible. So really cool to watch. And other things that have changed is obviously technology. Oh my gosh, not just within the shoes, but at the time we didn't have GPS watches. There was no Strava. It was just basically you had a Timex Ironman watch that you press start and stop and got your time on your feet. You kind of guesstimated distance. There was no mapping apps or anything like that. It was very simplistic. No online logs. It was, paper and pencil. You just kind of wrote down what you did. I still have all my old logs, which are fun to go through and see kind of things I was doing and what I was, doing for races. And I stayed sub-ultra from, up until 2008. And that's when I ran my first 50K at the New River Valley 50K, which is on an old rails to trail next to the New River. Beautiful course. I believe it's coming up here in March or April. Still going on. So if you want to try to PR at the 50K distance, that's a great race to do it at in Virginia. I think it starts in, I can't remember if it's Dumfries or Galax. It's probably Dumfries, but anyway, forgive me. You can check that course out. It's great. I love that. It's, thought about going back this year, but just didn't quite line up with what I was, going to do with Hellbender. So, but perhaps someday. So, I continued to grow in distance, and the sport evolved. GPS watches started coming out. Obviously, Strava started to become a player. Mapping apps. So, obviously, our sport has come a long way since when I started. And running the sub-ultra distance was so much fun. It was mountain racing, trail racing. That was where I got my roots, and I still love those races. I still love sub-ultra distances. I don't race them as much, but I still love them. I think it's it's a great part of our sport, and I hope that sport continues to grow. As ultra running has kind of eclipsed, as we look to go further and test ourselves more, ultra running has really eclipsed the normal trail runs. Obviously, it's been popularized by bigger events and bucket list races, and we'll talk about those as well. But I kind of want to talk about some things that have, kind of changed our sport. There's the usual that everybody talks about, the Dean Karnazes books, Ultramarathon Man, and of course Born to Run. Yeah, those are great books. They are. They got a ton of people into our sport, gave them a glimpse into what it's like to be an ultra runner, and turned people on to trying new things. But some things that I have learned along the way and have kind of changed my running and my way of thinking. And I've talked about some of these in the past, but I want to kind of touch on some of them as we reflect on the current state of our sport, because I think it's good to visit these things, to read some of these items for yourself, to gain more knowledge, so you understand how to better train and stay healthy. I'm going to start with, this first book is probably one of the Bibles of running. There are a few that you should have on your bookshelf. I'm not going to talk about all of them today. I'm actually going to talk about I'm going to talk with 2 other coaches next week about coaching. And that'll be part of this conversation, but we're going to do a deep dive into coaching and what you should be looking for in a coach next week. So, stay tuned for that podcast. But Jack Daniel's book, Daniel's Running Formula. I got to be on. I don't even know what edition now. I think I have maybe 3rd or 4th edition, and it may be up on the 6th by now. Who knows? But that book, it gives you such a great premise of exercise physiology. It's one of the ones that takes a deep dive into science. It may take a little extra time to read through it, reread, but it does explain exercise physiology at its finest. Dr. Jack Daniels is an exercise physiologist. He is one of the prominent coaches, if not, one of the most world-renowned coaches, and his book is just a wealth of information and knowledge that if you want a basic concept of training, that's the book that you should get. It gives you such good ideas and principles that you can apply to any level, be it, if you're looking to improve in half marathon, marathon, even in ultra, there are principles in there that will help you understand training and what you're doing and why you're doing it. So great book to read. It's probably one that you should have somebody you could ask some questions to, because it does get, kind of a deep dive into the science. So if you do not have a science background, it may be a little bit tough to understand some concepts. So if you have somebody you can talk to, ask questions to, another coach, a friend that has a good grasp of the science, then, it'll help you to have those conversations, perhaps over a long run. But Jack Daniel's book, Daniel's Running Formula, is, probably one of the top ones. You'll hear other coaches talk about it all the time. All of us have earmarked copies of various things that we pull out. My athletes, I have various workouts that I've created in Training Peaks that, they're just right from Jack Daniels. So some great stuff in that book. Great resource for everybody to have in order to understand their training principles. Now for our ultra runners, excuse me, I'm still sick. It's been 3 weeks and I can't get rid of this, so forgive me. The other book that I'd like to talk about, and again, I'm going to talk about a few other ones in other areas, but in training, is Koop's Training Essentials for Ultra Running. So Jason Koop's book, he's on the 2nd edition. There are, again, just some awesome chapters in that explain training. There's no training plans in there. That's not what it's about. It is about how to train for ultra. I think Koop does a great job of explaining and laying out the principles of training for an ultra and why we do them. What's the science behind it? That's the biggest thing. Koop looks for the science in training and what we should be doing and why. How's it going to help us improve? So his book, I highly recommend, as well as subscribing to his Research Essentials for Ultra Running. He does a monthly dive into 3 different studies that will help you understand what's going on in the world of science. What is science helping us understand in ultra running? I talk about every time it comes out. Actually, this evening we're having a Zoom call with the athletes I coach and talking about the articles, how they're applicable to us, what they make us understand. And I'll be talking about a concept a little bit later on that's actually covered in Volume 9, which just came out. So he has 9 volumes out right now. So 27 different studies have been reviewed. He talks about how they're applicable to the sport, what we should be looking at and considering and applying to our own training. So a great resource, a great resource. So, those 2 things by Jason Koop, so awesome. Throwing in there as well, Jason Koop also helped create the ultra running coaching module for UESCA. UESCA. UESCA is an online training platform for coaches. It gives you a certification, and it is probably the best certification that I have found thus far. A lot of coaches ask me what they should do, and I encourage them to go after that. So if you are just looking as a runner to understand training better, to train yourself better, the UESCA models are a great resource. Now, I should have stated earlier, I have no affiliation with any of these things that I'm mentioning. I purely believe in them, just because I think they'll help you. So the UESCA, I've done 3 of their training modules. I've done the running module, so run for run coaches. That would be for marathon and under. Fantastic program, great stuff. It goes into our physiology. It goes into our body, and it goes into our different energy systems and how they work. So very good deep dive. Like I said, I've gone through a lot of different certifications, and the UESCA is probably the most complete. The only component I'll say it's missing is in programming. That's the toughest piece, and that's something that I've been trying to come up with, is a programming certification for coaches, so that they can understand what programming looks like, how you should program, how you work through different systems. But there's a little bit in there, but that's the biggest component, and that's the toughest thing. I'm actually going to be doing a program with Koop coming up. It's live Zoom calls, and he mentors coaches. And so, I just want to go through some questions and hear other ideas. I'm always trying to evolve with my coaching and learn more. I went to the UESCA Ultrarunning conference in Colorado Springs this past fall. That was super helpful. I intend on going back anytime they host it, because it just was, it was wonderful. These things are all knowledge-based. So the more you know, the better you're off, right? So the more you can apply to your training and understand the principles that are going to make you better. So whether you are a coach or a runner, these are things I think can help. So the UESCA training modules are pretty awesome. To finish off that thought, I've got the running certification, I've got the ultra running certification, and I also have the exercise sports science nutrition certification. Now, again, I've talked about this in the past. That does not make me a nutritionist. I am not anywhere near a nutritionist. I understand the principles behind the energy systems and how to fuel them. I do not recommend, any type of dietary supplementation programs, anything like that. I just understand things better for my runners, so I can make sure that, they're just doing the right things. And if I see a red flag, I can recommend them to a dietitian or a nutritionist. So that's the idea behind that. But like I said, UESCA, fantastic. And, check out the show notes. I'm going to have a ton of resources in there. All of these things that I'm going over, I'll have links to in the show notes. So check those out. The other piece of that is that coaching has evolved so much. When I first started trail running, there weren't any trail specific, let alone ultra specific coaches. Coaches were basically marathon and under, and it was road. That's who coaches targeted. If you were a trail runner, I began to see coaches that were kind of going after trail runners probably in around 2000, I don't know, maybe 2005 to 2007, somewhere in there. I started seeing, more trail specific coaches, maybe even a little bit later, is when I started finding, some of these athletes that had done some amazing things on the trail, and, it was probably a side gig for them. But that's kind of when I started to see it. But, now you have all sorts of coaches, be it specialized or broad range, such as myself. That's really come a long way. And it's amazing to see. this coach evolution and how many people are getting into coaching. It's a great thing. As well as it can be, you have to be careful, obviously. Not everyone, just because they grab a certification, is going to be a great coach. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about next week, is what to look for when searching for a coach, and how do you find and line yourself up with a coach that's probably going to work well with you. So we'll talk more about that next week. But, as we talk about the state of our sport, I'm amazed by the evolution of coaching, which is super cool, and I'm happy to be a part of that. One of the other resources that I've come upon is Nick Tiller, Dr. Nick Tiller. He's been on a number of podcasts. He's on the Koop cast. I keep mentioning Koop because he's such a great resource to our sport. Nick Tiller, he looks at pseudoscience, right? So like things that are out there that really aren't doing us any good. And he is a part of the Skeptical Inquirer. You can check that out online. I'll put the link online. But there's some really amazing articles on there about what's science and what is pseudoscience. So what works and what really doesn't work. There's some things that popped up that I don't want to go into too deep a depth. But we'll kind of talk about some of the things that are in our sport right now. One being recovery tools. One of the big things that Dr. Tiller has kind of wrote out and spoke out against is all of these recovery tools. It's a huge industry, multi-million-dollar industry is these recovery tools. The reality is the efficacy of them is nil. There is no scientific data that proves that any of these recovery tools are doing exactly what they proclaim, and that's a travesty. That we spend all this money and there's no data to back up that they're actually working. Be it foam rollers, be it the Normatec boots. I don't mean to call out specific brands, but there's just nothing that backs that these are worth the money that you're spending on them. All it is if it feels good to you, then that's great, but it's not adding any benefit. So don't pour too much money into these recovery tools. As much as they claim they do this, that, and the other thing, unfortunately, as Dr. Tiller states, they do not. And that's part of the pseudoscience and some of the things that he talks about in the Skeptical Inquirer. So, check that out. There's a lot of good stuff there. And, we'll get into one other piece here, and that would be shoe tech. Obviously, we talked a little bit about shoes earlier, but the evolution of the shoe with plated technology is really, oh my gosh, we're at the forefront of, this kind of burgeoning technology that's really obviously changed our sport. I mean, we're producing world records left and right in all distances, which obviously has to be attributed partly to the shoes. There's not a million things, but there's a lot of things that can help facilitate these records. Obviously, training concepts is one of them, but the shoes are definitely a huge player in this. Now, what I never considered and what we need to consider as consumers is that not all super shoes, even the Nikes, the most prominent and most effective, if we look at the studies, the Nike, Alpha Fly is the most successful of all the super shoes. That's when they do the tests. That's the one that produces and yields the best results, the best benefit for the runner. But not every super shoe is for every runner. There are runners in which the shoes have no effect, so it does not provide you any benefit. There are even people that it provides a negative benefit. They actually run slower in a super shoe compared to just a regular running shoe, a non-super shoe. Now that blew my mind. I had never ever thought about that. But when this was actually in Koop's Research Essentials, I can't remember which volume it was in, but they talk about that, super shoes can have a negative effect. Like they can actually make you slower. They're non-beneficial. That's incredible. Who would ever have thought? All they tout is that we're receiving such great benefits from these. These athletes are running these incredible times, but the reality is it may not benefit you at all. And you may buy a $250 shoe and it actually makes you slower. That's something that's, is it still worth it to try? Potentially, because of what can, how you can benefit from it. But if you buy it and you're noticing times are slower, I just don't want you to be caught off guard. So recognize what it's doing for you. Is it actually making you faster? Are you doing better with the shoe? If not, then, just a heads up, that's a reality, which is crazy. So, again, not everything that they're saying is the best for us is really the best. It's crazy, but that's the reality. Now, with these records that are coming down with these shoes, another piece of our sport that has kind of taken off is FKTs, or fastest known times. Over COVID, it was a way that people could get a performance and, put something on the calendar, have something to train for, which, that's really cool that we had this this idea to go after these records on various, routes and create new routes, which is super cool. And that's continued to be the case, even as races have, obviously begun to come back and even new races popping up. FKTs are still, a part of our sport, which is cool. And, and you don't have to be an elite to go after an FKT. You can just establish your own record or go after one that you see, which is, within your reach. That's super cool. I think that's a neat part of the sport that has just come to light and come to fruition. It's not a new concept, obviously. FKTs have been around for a while, but again, within recent years, it's become more and more relevant to running, which is that's like I said, that's just a really cool piece of the sport. And it's not for everybody. I'm not a huge, FKT person. I've set FKTs and I just don't care. I don't want to submit them. That's just, not what I'm doing the route for. People will chase them and want to get on the FKT boards, which is cool. I think that's great, but like I said, it's not something that I really, really care too much about. I'm not looking for acclaim. Like I said, I just like running the routes sometimes, and sometimes I run them fast, and I've had people ask me, well, why didn't you submit that? That would be the FKT. Well, yeah, I guess, but I just don't. It doesn't bother me. It's not, it's not something I really want to take the time to submit and care about. And that's the thing about FKTs. It's the fastest known time. There still could be a faster time that somebody's run previously, but they just didn't bother to submit it. But anyhow, I digress. FKTs are pretty cool, and I'm glad it's a part of our sport. I'm glad people are chasing and reaching for new things and being creative. I think it's a really neat way to do things. So kudos to them. Also, FKTs have been a welcome addition because our sport has grown so much. When we look at now the amount of lotteries that are taking place in order to get into various races, it's crazy. Like back in the day, when I started running, even ultra running, it was just there's very few online registration platforms. Those have grown immensely, obviously, but it was paper and pencil. You could go online, print off the entry form, fill it out, mail a check, and you were into the race. And so this lottery system has become such a kind of a bane to much of our existence, because many of us want to run this race or that race, but due to the lottery, we have to wait years upon years, and that's a shame. That it's come to that point. I don't see any other way around it. I'm just saying it's hard, and people want to continue to grow our sport, but I don't know how much more we can grow with the limited availability of the races that are out there. There's only so many places we can host races, and the Forest Service is already understaffed and underfunded. It's tough to get the approval for new races anymore. They'll still happen. There'll still be new races popping up, and I hope they do. It gives people opportunities to do something else when they can't get into the lotteries, that they're trying to get into. And I pray that everybody that is in lotteries has the opportunity to run those races at some point. I've been more than fortunate to get into some of the bigger ones and do some of the races that have lotteries and such. So I do pray that you get into those and you get to enjoy that. But the lotteries have just seemed to get out of control, especially the Western States lottery. It's just insane how many people are entering that lottery now and how many tickets are in and what the chances are of actually running. Now that people are waiting potentially up to 10 years to get into a race, that's insane. But that's the state of our sport, right? And that's the system. That's what we have to abide by. And just be patient. And that's hard. It's hard for us in instant gratification society. So, but it's like I said, these races are well worth it. If you're waiting on Hard Rock, I know UTMB is controversial. There's a lot going on in that. But I'll tell you, the UTMB course is amazing. Whether you go over there and do it on your own, or you do it during race week, it is an amazing race. Chamonix and that whole circumnavigation of Mont Blanc is just phenomenal. It's incredible. What an experience. So hate what UTMB is doing. If you do, that's your choice. I understand if you want to boycott them. Totally get it. I did it in 2019 before all this craziness, so I was fortunate to kind of get it done. But like I said, it's an amazing race. So support them if you want, or or not. It's totally your choice. But like I said, I do suggest trying to get over there and seeing the course, whether you do the race or whether you just go for a multi-day adventure. So one of the things that I want to circle back to, I've talked on this podcast about my own experiences with my diet. I've had help with a nutritionist in Meredith, Terranova. I've sought advice from a registered dietitian in Jake Edmiston, and it's something that I'm ironing out. It's taken me a long time to kind of figure out what's going on, and I think we're finally on the right track. But something that threw me off the track, and something that I was just reading about in Koop's Research Essentials, is low energy availability. And I found myself in that state of low energy availability in my training for quite some time, and not understanding where it was coming from. I didn't think it was from overtraining, but I just couldn't pinpoint. And as I start to connect the dots, I believe it was from intermittent fasting. Now, there are a lot of proponents for intermittent fasting, and what they say the benefits are. And you yourself may be a huge advocate for intermittent fasting. So what I'm about to say is not for everybody. I'm simply stating it put me into a state of low energy availability. Now that I am eating breakfast early in the morning prior to my runs have become so much better. I feel so much better. It's incredible what that does. And it's also kickstarted my metabolism. I had questions come in from the podcast saying, well, what did you do different dietarily? And one of the key things that I did was just start to eat a small breakfast prior to running early in the morning, and that starts my metabolism. I was slowing my metabolism down too much by intermittent fasting. I needed to speed my metabolism back up. And by eating some calories prior to going for my run in the morning, I've done that. I have not put my system in a state of stress while I go running, because it has the supplies it needs, the food, the calories, to go for a run. Running is such a stressful state to begin with. We don't need to overstress the system by running fasted. So it's really changed my view about what I did. And, there were times where I did not purposefully fast. It was not my intention to. It was just I was rushed in the morning and just, did not eat. Now I am being intentional and setting the intention of having some food in the morning prior to my runs. And as I said, that has changed my whole running. I am losing weight again. My metabolism is speeding back up. It's not to say that's the only thing that has helped me. Other pieces have been just portion control. And so my lunch is my biggest meal now, and my dinner is a smaller portion so that I don't have a ton of calories before I lay down. My snacking habits have changed. So there are all these other little components that have helped. So it's not to say that simple act of eating before the run has totally been a game changer. There are other factors in this, but like I said, coming from what I would deem low energy availability and feeling like garbage for weeks on end and wondering why my runs felt so horrible, I can see now that I wasn't fueling properly. And that has really been a game changer. So if you are feeling the same way, if you're like, why am I so lethargic and sluggish on my runs? Why do I feel so awful so frequently? And it's not due to overtraining or too high a volume or too high intensity. Look to, do you have enough fuel to fuel your run? So are you eating enough in order to fuel your run? And that's a conversation I suggest you have with a trusted nutritionist or dietitian. It's a great conversation to have. I'm not here to make those kind of recommendations. And what the Koopcast, the Research Essentials was stating is that there is no real great way to provide evidence that you have low energy availability. There's some calculations you can do to see if you're meeting your needs, but if you're in a state of low energy availability, it's really hard to diagnose. So have a conversation with your primary care physician. Have a conversation with the dietitian. These are people that should be on your team, and you should have a contact to reach out to. It shouldn't be somebody that you have to rely on all the time, but having those people and that that contact information and that that availability to you is huge. So please make them a part of your team and consider those things. All right, I think I said enough on that. Another book that has really been influential on my thought process in the past year is Damian Hall's book, We Can't Run Away From This. It's a great book. It is on Amazon or Audible, if you will, so you can listen to it. But there are some great pieces and takeaways from this. Now, Damian is almost to the point of an evangelist when it comes to our carbon footprint, and he does some things that I don't know if I could ever go as far as what he does in order to be as minimal in leaving a carbon footprint as he does. It's pretty impressive, I'll be honest. But it has changed my views on my consumer habits. So, in other words, do I need another piece of apparel? Do I need another pair of shoes? Do I need a new watch? Usually the answer is no. And that's what I have to remember. And every time that something pops into my head, if I see an item, I think about Damian's book and what these items cost at a carbon footprint level. You know, the emissions that it excuse me, that it costs not only to produce these items, but to ship them and land them in my hands. There's just a lot of damage, environmental damage, that our industry does by overconsumption of products. There's just so many shiny objects out there. I get it. And I was guilty of buying way too many shoes. My basement right now is disgusting with how many shoes that I have. You know, I have shoes in very varied states. And so I am guilty of buying and over-consuming. But this book has made me recognize that I was over-consuming and that I don't need to purchase as much as I constantly do. You know, my puffy got torn. I sent it back to Patagonia. They sewed it back up and sent it back to me for $15. So I'm trying to be a little bit more frugal with products I already have, and making sure that I make the products that I have last. And I don't judge anybody that thinks differently, that wants to purchase a new pair of shoes. But I suggest you read this book and hear what goes into the production of apparel and the production of shoes and what it does to the environment, just so you have an understanding of, when you buy something, the effect that it has. So please do check out Damian Hall's book, We Can't Run Away From This. It may change your mind on quite a few items. But I appreciate the fact that he wrote this and had the wherewithal and the bravery to kind of stand up to our society in general, because we are a society of consumption. We buy so many products, and some of it is, we just have to think: is it necessary or is it just a want? The difference between a want and a need is quite it's quite big. So I'm trying to make sure that I buy the things I need and just hold off on things that I want, which has been tough. But it's a good change. It is a good shift, and I'm really happy that I'm not clicking the purchase button so often. So anyway, check out that book. Really great book. Okay. The last piece of this, I have talked about these two books at length on other podcasts, so I don't think I need to go too in-depth on them. But the last piece of the state of our sport is where we've come from a mental training standpoint. The exercise physiology is wonderful, but the mental training and training our psyche and our ability to have the wherewithal to withstand these tough events. I first read Travis Macy's book Ultra Mindset back in 2016. It was a fantastic read. Really started me on the path of training my mind and my body, and being more mentally tough, understanding how and what tools I needed to employ and put into use while racing, while training. So I attribute Travis Macy to a lot of this. That's a great book. One that, I've gone through multiple times. I've listened to it. I've read it. I've gone through some of the exercises in there multiple times. So it's one that I keep coming back to. So Travis Macy's Ultra Mindset. And the other one that I reference quite frequently on the podcast is Addie Bracy's Mental Training for Ultrarunning. That is another book that is just a wealth of activities and tools that you can use in your running and daily life. Both books are not just applicable to running, but to your life. I think it's one piece of the pie that sometimes we don't work hard enough on, is that mental piece. Because as we know, running is a huge mental component. It has a huge mental component. So training it, making yourself more efficient and stronger, that's just, why wouldn't you? So those two books, I think, are a good starting point. There's some great other resources, and perhaps we talk about those at another time. But these books coming out, and Addie Bracy's book just coming out more recently, I think it's really come to light that we need to work on these things and acknowledge our weaknesses, not only physically but mentally. We talked about the physical training books, but these two books will help you train mentally. And in the state of our sport, I think that's just vital. It's training. If we look at every component, we've talked about nutrition, we've talked about the physical training, we've talked about the mental training. These are all pieces that are a huge part of your running. And if you're training it holistically, looking at every piece of it, then you're going to be a better runner. So I really encourage you to pick those books up. Maybe ask for them for the holidays here. So again, I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. But yeah, the state of our sport is amazing. We've grown. We went through COVID and we missed races. Now races are back, and I think we're learning to help support our local events however we can, be it through volunteering or racing them. We've changed. We understand the importance of our races, our local races, and supporting those. We understand the importance of the trail. More people are getting out to do trail work, and I think that's fantastic. I try to advocate for trail work as much as I can. I've been doing trail work since 2000 and I think 2008. I started doing trail work on my section in the Mountains to Sea Trail, which it's time for me to get back up there as soon as the Parkway reopens. But the trails, if you see that there's sections that need it, report it to the agencies that maintain it. And if you can help, see if you can join them for a work day. Get out there. A lot of these races require that you have 8 hours of trail maintenance. If you can go beyond that, get out there and help keep these trails open and nice. Because you go for a run and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many trees down. Well, see if you can be a part of remedying that. I say it time and time again. Trail work is it's great because it makes it better for all of us. Everybody that uses it. So get out there if you can. That's my biggest encouragement. So, yep. Nothing profound. The state of our sport here. But I think there's a lot of pieces in here hopefully you can take away to help your own training and help your own running. And if it brings up questions and you have questions about anything that I've said, you want me to expound upon them, ask. Let me know. Because there's so much. There's so many other items we could get into, but those are some of the biggest things that came to my mind when I thought about where we're at in the sport and things that I'm learning that were a surprise to me or were very helpful to me. So, like I said, let me know if you have any questions. As I said, and obviously I'm still not over this illness. I am running, but I'm just taking it easy. I do have South Mountains coming up here January 7th, the half marathon. As my training stands right now, I am not feeling too confident that I'm going to actually, go after a solid race there. I'm probably just going to go run and enjoy the race atmosphere. Because it's just been, this past 3 weeks has just been tough on me. Being sick. I don't feel awful, but this cough, I can tell my heart rate's still a little bit high, when I go run. I'm looking at my heart rate, trying to stay zone 2 right now and just take it easy on my body, not create too much stress, not go too hard. Been trying to control the environment. Here in Western North Carolina, it's super cold in the mornings when I run, so more often than not, I've just been hopping on the treadmill just to stay warm and to kind of control the environment so that I don't get sicker. Even though going outside is great, the cold air kind of hurts my lungs. The way I feel right now. So, but yeah. So training's it's okay. It's not been great, unfortunately, but it's still early in the training cycle. So happy to be able to run. I can say that. And then so far as coaching goes, I've had some new athletes come on. I've had some old athletes pop off because it's that time of year. And if you're interested in coaching, as always, just reach out. All my contact information is in the show notes. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. The kind of process is if you reach out, I'll send you my call schedule. We'll sign up for a time that works for you, and then we'll have a phone conversation and kind of talk about what I do, and what your goals are, and if things sound good to you, we'll proceed from there. As I said, next week we're going to be talking about finding a coach. So you'll hear from 2 other coaches as well as we kind of have a panel discussion about finding a good coach and how things work with coaching. So stay tuned for that. Looking forward to that. Also going to be interviewing the CEO of New York Roadrunners Club, which I'm super excited about over the holidays, as well as Jamie from Flame Bearers. So got a lot of stuff coming up. I'm pretty excited for the podcast. So some cool things. As always, thanks to my Patreon supporters. You guys are amazing. If you can support at the Patreon, the link is in the show notes. Also on my website, runningislife.run. Lastly, I've got a few hats left. They have been going fast, which I really do appreciate the support, guys. If you want to know what they look like, check out my social media. It's on Facebook and Instagram. You can see I've got a winter beanie, fleece-lined, a headband that's fleece-lined, as well as a really cool trucker. I'm pretty stoked about the trucker. Like I said last week, it's probably one of my favorites. So if you're interested in one of those, just reach out to me. And the beanie is $24. That includes shipping. All these prices include shipping. The headband is $28, and the trucker is $35. So, but please reach out if you'd like one of those. Appreciate that greatly. Want to support the brand that supports me right now, Useway. I've got a discount code. If you're interested in checking out a Useway pack, you can use the discount code in the show notes. They've been fantastic in support of my endeavors, so I appreciate them. And I think that's it. Until next time, my friends, keep moving forward.